My cheating wife's friend wanted a meeting. What she said shocked me. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the living room where I sat with a sinking feeling in my gut. The vibrant colors of the sunset painted the walls, a stark contrast to the dull gray cloud hovering over my heart. Just days before, I had stumbled upon some photos that pierced through the facade of my 7-year marriage to Lily. Images of her in an intimate embrace with a man named Alex, laughing and kissing as if the world didn't exist. Every detail, her smile, her unguarded joy, cut deeper than any knife, inflaming a rage intertwined with disbelief and sorrow. Infidelity was supposed to be a distant fear, a subject in hushed conversations with friends rather than an unwelcome intruder in my life. The moment I had seen those images, my safe, well-structured world shattered into splinters. Helplessness enveloped me like a fog. How could this happen? The very air felt heavy with the curse of knowing. It was a bitterness I could hardly stomach. My thoughts went back to the moments we shared, the laughter echoing down hallways, the warmth of her hand wrapped snugly around mine, how I believed her words when she promised to love me forever. Suddenly, those reassurances felt like whispers in the wind, blown away by reality's storm. I had been sitting on this revelation for far too long. Clenching the phone, I felt the weight of our son, Noah, sleeping soundly upstairs. The morning routine, the school runs, the evening dinners, each moment felt tainted by this unspeakable truth. My love for Lily battled with an emerging fury, and nights spent in desolation only fueled my desire for answers. The gnawing frustration bubbled within me as I flipped through the images over and over again. Was that genuine joy, or a facade she wore for someone else? Panic coursed through me. I didn't want my son to grow up in a home where the very walls echoed with betrayal. An image flickered in my mind, Noah's bright eyes lighting up at the sight of his mother, who now felt like a stranger cloaked in deceit. How could she do this? The question looped relentlessly in my head, sparking both resentment and an aching desire to understand the madness that drove her to another man's arms. Just then, as if tuned to my unrest, my phone buzzed, and a text from Ella, Lily's friend, lit the screen. "Can we talk? It's important." My heart raced, butterflies roiling in my stomach. Why had Lily's ally reached out now? The last thing I wanted was to engage with her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting might unravel the tangled knots of our lives and hold the answers I sought. What could Ella possibly have to say? Was she another bearer of bad news, or just a messenger for Lily's indiscretions? I had always found her presence comforting. She was someone I trusted, always ready to lend an ear or a laugh. But now, the thought of her felt like a baited hook, drawing me closer to an abyss I wasn't ready to dive into. In a daze, I stared through the large bay window, watching as the sun slipped below the horizon, surrendering the light to the creeping darkness. The world outside was oblivious to my turmoil. People laughed, cars honked cheerfully, life moved on without acknowledging the wreckage happening in my home. My heart took a heavy leap as I studied my own reflection, a tortured visage staring back at me. It felt surreal, like a scene from a twisted play, where I was merely an actor stuck in a soliloquy of despair. The indecision gnawed at me. The lure of Ella's invitation felt like an unexplored path shrouded in fog, one that could either lead to clarity or more heartache. What if I learned something that would further plunge me into a pit of resentment? But what if there was something deeper driving Lily, a truth I was oblivious to? With my pulse racing and my mind whirling, I decided on the only course of action that felt remotely sane. I had to meet Ella. I had to understand the depths of this betrayal. When I arrived at the cafe, the familiar sounds of clinking cups and muted conversations greeted me, almost comforting in their mundane essence. I caught sight of Ella sitting alone, an unease shadowing her usually cheerful demeanor. Her eyes darted nervously around her, like she had something momentous to share that had weighed heavily on her heart. My hands trembled slightly as I approached her table, the anticipation of whatever news she carried intensifying the tight coil of anxiety in my chest. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her voice soft yet strained. The sincerity in her tone tore at my resolve, but I blinked back the sorrow that threatened to emerge like an emotional floodgate prepared to burst. The tension cracked the air between us as she hesitated, visibly gathering her thoughts. "I wish I could say this was easy for me," she continued, biting her lip, her fingers twisting nervously around her coffee cup. "But it's not. You deserve to know who your wife really is right now, Brian." Her eyes glistened with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Regret, perhaps? Or was it a hint of guilt because of the role she played? The familiar bitterness surfaced, and I prepared myself for whatever shocking confession lay ahead. Lily has been lost, Ella pressed on. I think she was searching for something outside of your marriage and confused it with freedom. I don't know where it all went wrong, but she's not the woman you fell in love with anymore. The words struck me like stones, each one sending ripples of pain coursing through my heart. She was right. This wasn't about lust. It was a reckoning of deeper issues I wished I'd noticed but chose to ignore in my complacency. As I absorbed Ella's words, the cafe faded into a backdrop, and all my focus honed in on the same question that had been spinning in my mind. How do we get here? My life no longer felt linear. It was a web of confusion and heartbreak that spread out into a tangled mass of choices, each one leading to the next, but without clarity or direction. I could feel the tears pricking at the corners of my eyes, but I fought them back in vain. There was so much I wanted to say, to demand answers to, yet I felt overwhelmed by the grief gnawing at my heart. Would I be strong enough to face whatever lay ahead? The flame of my hope flickered against the winds of uncertainty, and I braced myself for the storm that awaited. As I stepped into the cafe on the corner, the smell of freshly brewed coffee intertwined with the lingering aroma of baked goods. It should have been a comforting scene, yet my heart raced, anticipating confrontation. Ella was seated at a corner table, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup, her expression unreadable. I slid into the seat across from her, the tension palpable, thickening the air around us. The cheerful chatter of patrons faded into an indistinct hum, my focus solely on the woman who had walked into my home countless times smiling and laughing with Lily. "Thanks for coming," she began, glancing up briefly before looking down at her steaming cup. "I know you and Lily are, well, tumultuous right now." The hesitation in her voice gnawed at my insides. I could feel the anger boiling as I envisioned the conversations they must have had, discussions that might have led to this betrayal rather than safeguarding our marriage. "Lily isn't the person you think she is," Ella finally blurted, tears pooling in her eyes. Her words surged through the silence around us, mingling with my fury. "I think you should know the truth. Why should I trust her? Was she here to rekindle old loyalties or genuinely help me understand?" A low simmer of doubt wrapped around me like a shroud. I focused intently on her face, searching for any traces of deceit or insincerity, a flicker of guilt that would lead me to believe she might be just another player in this tragic drama. All at once, I was overwhelmed with an insatiable need to know, to press for the details behind this unraveling tapestry of love and betrayal. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice quivering despite my efforts to maintain an air of steadiness. Ella hesitated, the raw emotion shining in her eyes, an intimate glimpse into the turmoil I was desperately trying to make sense of. "Lily, she's been struggling, Brian. It's not just about Alex. It's bigger than that. She lost herself a while ago. You have to understand, she sought solace elsewhere because the pressures of life here became too much." Those words penetrated my chest, igniting a familiar yearning within, a blend of anger and a flicker of understanding that told me she was right. The weight of their meaning settled uncomfortably, turning my stomach. I had felt it too. Lily had transformed before my eyes over the past year, slipping into a version of herself that was almost unrecognizable. Although I desperately wished to retreat into anger, I felt the stirrings of compassion within. But how does that justify hurting our family? Ella shifted uncomfortably, biting her lip while the steam danced above her half-empty cup. "I don't condone what she did. I really don't. But sometimes people act out in desperation. You've been busy with work, so focused. I think you fail to see what she truly needed from you, what she yearned for. Need? Love? Respect? How can she equate an affair to that?" "I wish I had seen it," I spat back, my frustration transforming into the realization that maybe I had been too engrossed in my own existence to notice her discontent. The revelation burned brighter, mixed with twisted regret. Clouds of shame enveloped me, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the urge to defend Lily, a cruel juxtaposition after discovering her betrayal. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Did you know? Did you watch this unfold? Were you complicit in her lies?" Ella's expression morphed into one of distress as my words hung heavily in the air. "No, I didn't know. Not until recently. I found out from a mutual friend, and it broke my heart. I couldn't stand idle while you suffered, while Noah suffers." The sound of her words cut through my defenses, the genuine concern for my son wrapping around my heart like a homing beacon. Ella lowered her voice into an almost conspiratorial whisper. She's been lost for a long time, Brian. It's not just a fling. She went looking for something she thought she'd lost, something I hope she can reclaim. I felt like I was trapped in a hall of mirrors, every reflection a shattered piece of who we used to be. Thoughts of Noah flickered in and out of focus, a haunting reminder that while our relationship splintered, his innocence hung like a fragile thread in the balance. I could feel my chest tightening as the emotional complexity twisted around me like a suffocating vine. And you're telling me it's my fault? My fault for not being attentive enough? The accusation was charged but almost playful in its desperation. I needed someone to fall back on, to hold accountable. No, Ella countered softly, her eyes pleading for understanding. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we often forget to talk. You both got caught up in life's whirlwind without realizing it was spinning you further apart. You loved her, and she loved you, but sometimes love gets tangled in our fears and insecurities. Her words sank deep, but my anger still wrestled for dominance, my thoughts spiraling between self-blame and the higher ground of victimhood. But she chose this. I added dismissively, my voice tight and raw. Yes, Ella said, nodding. True, she made choices, but I also want you to know that I believe she wants to come back to you. I think she's trying to find a way. But first, she needs to confront herself. The hope Ella dangled before me felt like a double-edged sword. Was I supposed to accept these notions and forge a path paved with blind optimism? The world around us continued its frenetic pace, muffled laughter, the unmistakable clinking of a spoon against a ceramic cup, while I was mired in deep contemplation. Could our love evolve after such longing had veered into betrayal? The emotional stakes clawed at my heart, pressing me to consider the gravity of Ella's words. It felt righteous to want answers, yet vulnerability with Lily now felt like leaping straight off a cliff into murky waters without knowing how to swim. What do I do then? I blurted at last, staring into Ella's eyes. She's lost herself, found solace in someone she thought might fill the void. And now she may want to come back. I don't know if I can trust her again. At that moment, a flicker of determination surfaced within me, clouded yet potent, filled with the remnants of love desperately holding on. I wanted to mend this rift, not just for my sake, but for Noah's. The shards of our shattered lives lay precariously between us, and if there was a chance to reshape them, even in the most imperfect way, I had to pursue it. The question was how to approach Lily with tenderness while still addressing the wounds both of us had suffered. You'll have to figure it out for yourself, Brian, Ella replied, her voice echoing a mixture of hope and resignation. But remember, every moment counts. And sometimes, the hardest conversations lead us back to where we're meant to be together. Her sincerity pierced through the fog of uncertainty, igniting a flame of resilience within me. As I left the cafe, the world outside felt a little more vibrant, colors brighter against the backdrop of a tumultuous reality. There was a sense of possibility mingling with the pain. Ella's insights had just cracked the door open on a path I might have dismissed without a moment's thought. I stepped forward, propelled by a growing instinct that perhaps confronting this darkness might lead us back to the light. So much remained unresolved, but one thing was certain. I needed to face Lily to see if this fragile connection still held any flicker of hope, however dim. My memories of the past couple of weeks swirled in my mind like a chaotic storm as Ella spoke. I recalled our family at the lake, Noah splashing in the water while Lily and I exchanged playful banter, our laughter mingling with the joyous cries of a summer day. Those snapshots, his innocent joy, her playful nudges, all cloaked in warmth and love, now felt alien against the harsh backdrop of the truth Ella was unraveling before me. I could almost hear the splashes of water and see the sun dancing on the waves, but that image had dimmed, robbed of its luster by the dark reality encroaching on my life. Ella's voice cut through my reverie, heavy and laden with an urgency that sent fresh pain seeping into my heart. She didn't mean for it to happen, but the words she shared cut deeper than you can imagine. She thought it would make her feel alive again, she whispered, barely meeting my gaze. Her admission hung in the air like a thick fog, clouding my thoughts. That sense of drowning enveloped me again, the idea that Lily had sought thrill outside our marriage, the very fabric of our life together torn apart by moments of impulsive desire. How could she mistake exhilaration for intimacy, excitement for fulfillment? Alive, I echoed bitterly, shaking my head as if to dislodge the dark images from my mind. So you're saying she cheated on me because she felt bored? Because that's some excuse for destroying our family. Ella flinched at the word cheated, clearly shaken, her discomfort amplifying the chaos inside of me. I felt a strange tension between needing to wallow in anger and the urge to wade into this painful conversation, each thought coming at me like crashing waves. No, it's not an excuse, Ella insisted, her eyes pleading for my understanding. But I think she thought it was something different, just a fleeting phase. A fleeting fluke, a light-hearted fling. The gravity of the betrayal settled heavily on my chest, leading me to confront my churning emotions. It was overwhelming. How could Lily have slipped so carelessly into another man's arms, and why had she not sought that thrill with me? As Ella recounted the spiraling confusion surrounding Lily's choices, I took a deep breath to steady myself. An ache nestled in my heart, a toxic blend of sorrow and disbelief. You're saying she strayed because she wanted more thrill in her life? What about the thrill of being a wife? A mother? I said, my voice laced with incredulity. What about us? Ella shifted in her seat, glancing down at her cup, and I could see her grappling with the weight of our conversation. I don't condone what she did. I really don't, she said, her voice quivering slightly now. But sometimes people act out in desperation. You've been busy with work, so focused. I think you fail to see what she truly needed from you, what she yearned for. There was a strange tension rising between us, and I could almost feel the tightrope we were walking. Ella voiced the fears I had buried deep within. My world was unraveling, and in some twisted way, her honesty was like a bomb and a torch simultaneously. Need? Love? Respect? I questioned, my voice sharper with emotion. How can she equate an affair to that? I wish I had seen it. That's all I've ever wanted for her, to feel cherished. The words spilled out, each one a frantic echo of my deepest emotions. A part of me recoiled at the thought of defending Lily, yet the pang of love still lingered in me, not extinguished despite the unforgivable actions. Before Ella could respond, the cafe hummed with life around us, reminding me of the reality I wanted nothing more than to escape. Did you know? I demanded, feeling a desperate clench in my stomach. Did you watch this unfold? Were you complicit in her lies? My gaze bore into her, every word laced with urgency, wanting her to feel my pain, to shoulder the burden of this betrayal alongside me. I needed answers, and perhaps some semblance of blame. Ella's eyes widened at my accusation, her expression morphing into one of distress. No, I didn't know. Not until recently, she replied, her voice tight. I found out from a mutual friend, and it broke my heart. I couldn't stand idle while you suffered, while Noah suffers. The careful way she articulated our son's name softened the edges of my anger, beckoning a flicker of concern from deep within. What kind of life were we handing to him, mired in this turmoil? Do you mean to say I'm at fault for not noticing Lily's struggles? I shot back, trying to harness my simmering emotions. The idea that my obliviousness had played any part in this web of deceit made my stomach turn. No, she said firmly, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we often forget to talk. You both got caught up in life's whirlwind without realizing it was spinning you further apart. You loved her, and she loved you, but sometimes love gets tangled in our fears and insecurities. With her last words hanging in the air, the enormity of her sincerity washed over me. Torn between wanting to cling to my hurt and accepting that I too had failed to nurture what we had, I felt myself teetering on the edge. But she chose this. I added dismissively again, but my heart fought against the bitterness in my tone. Yes, Ella replied. True, she made choices, but I also want you to know that I believe she wants to come back to you. I think she's trying to find a way. But first, she needs to confront herself. The notion caught me like a sudden jolt of electricity. Could it be possible? Could the woman who had dashed my heart against the rocky shores of betrayal really want to mend things? The hope Ella dangled before me felt weighty, full of potential, but painfully uncertain. I needed to protect myself, yet I also needed to consider the possibility that redemption could come from Lily. The flickering memories of our life began to blur with a harsh reality, and soon I found myself hovering in the unfamiliar space of vulnerability. Could I truly entertain the idea of rebuilding when betrayal still lingered like an indistinct shadow? Who am I to believe her? To open myself up to more pain? I asked, my heart racing in apprehension. After everything, am I just going to brush it off as a phase? Ella's sincerity pierced that ever-persistent wall of anger, infusing me with a resolve I didn't know I had. "You'll have to figure it out for yourself, Brian," she said softly, her voice devoid of pretenses. "But remember, every moment counts. And sometimes, the hardest conversations lead us back to where we're meant to be, together." As much as her words stirred an instinctual urge to rage against the situation, I felt a palatable flicker of curiosity ignite within, a questioning of whether there remained fragments worth retrieving. With each step I took as I left the cafe, the world rumbled back to life around me, the daylight sharper and more vibrant. The weight of the past few weeks crushed me still, but now there was a stirring inside, a determination bubbling just beneath the surface. Perhaps confronting this darkness, this betrayal, could forge an avenue through which healing would emerge. I felt as though I stood poised at a precipice, ready to leap into murky waters yet tethered by the tether of parental love. Walking home, I replayed Ella's words endlessly. Could our love evolve after this upheaval? I started to believe it might be possible, and with the flicker of that belief, a cautious optimism began to thread its way into my heart. I needed to face Lily, to see if any remnants of our love could possibly remain buried amidst the wreckage, longing for resuscitation. The fragile connection we had built over years lingered in the corners of my mind, urging me forward, daring me to reclaim what might still be salvageable. A sense of betrayal washed over me, drowning the warmth I once associated with Lily. "What do you want from me, Ella?" I demanded, sitting taller in my chair, determined to regain some control in this bewildering situation. She reached for my hand across the table, an intimate gesture that caught me off guard. "I want you to know that you deserve more than what she's given you. And more importantly, you deserve to hear this from someone who cares about your family as much as I do." Her next words hung heavy in the air. "Lily loves you, but she lost her way. I think she's been trying to come back, but didn't know how." Did I want to believe Ella? If I did, it might mean rekindling some embers of love for a woman I felt deeply betrayed by. But was a shattered trust worth reconciling? My thoughts drifted to Noah, our innocent son hiding in the shadows of our turmoil. The thought of him growing up in a broken home ignited something deep within me. I wanted desperately to protect that light, even if it meant navigating this dark labyrinth with Lily. Feeling the cool porcelain of my coffee cup against my fingers seemed to anchor me in this unsettling moment. Ella's eyes searched mine, and I caught a glimpse of her deep concern layered beneath her efforts to justify Lily's actions. "I just don't understand how she could risk everything we built," I murmured, my voice trembling as the weight of disbelief threatened to crush me again. Wasn't it worth protecting? Didn't our family mean anything? As I spoke, my eyes softened with each recollected moment of laughter and love, the family movie nights on the couch, the lazy weekends at the park, Noah's joyous giggles as he ran around, innocent to the chaos brewing beneath our roof. I recalled how we used to talk about our dreams, envisioning the life we'd build together. Yet here I sat, wrestling with the aftermath of betrayal, wrestling with a man who had been so deeply entangled in my past. A whirlwind of emotions surged through me, merging sadness, anger, and confusion into an overwhelming storm threatening to burst free. "No, Lily was never careless, Brian. She was lost," Ella responded, her voice steady yet soft. "You have to try to see it from her perspective. You know how distant things have been between you two lately. You've both been so caught up in the day-to-day and in the chaos of being busy parents. Sometimes we forget to check in with each other. It's easier to hide from ourselves when we're covering the monsters in our minds." I wanted to argue, to guard my heart against empathy for Lily. Yet Ella's words struck a chord deep inside. I had been so absorbed in work, so eager to provide for my family, that I'd let everything else slip beneath the surface, like a stone sinking to the bottom of a river. Was I so blindly focused on securing our future that I neglected to nourish our love? That introspection gnawed at me like a persistent ache. "This isn't just about busy schedules, Ella. This is about love, respect, trust," I retorted, letting anger spill forth like a torrent. "You can't tell me that a few late nights at the office drive a wedge deep enough for her to cheat." I could hear the disbelief flicker in my voice, yet I found an unnerving part of me grappling with her words. "But those things build up, don't they?" Ella urged, leaning closer. "Sometimes it's not a single moment that causes the fractures. It's a cracked foundation. You both needed to address it." She needed to feel seen again. She craved connection and intimacy, and she thought she could find it outside your marriage. Ella's conviction laid bare a truth I couldn't ignore, despite the sharp edges of my defensiveness. People find ways to make themselves feel alive, even if those ways are destructive. She made a terrible choice. I'm not excusing it. But your love is still worth fighting for. The thoughts spiraled in my mind as I struggled to process the nuances of guilt and love, betrayal and redemption. What if she can never come back from this? What if she's forever changed, and I'm left holding on to something that no longer exists? An ache throbbed at my temples, a physical manifestation of my spiraling emotions. Brian, she hasn't left you yet, Ella replied gently. You're living in the future instead of dealing with today. You both face a reckoning, but there's a glimmer of hope if you're willing to talk, to confront the hard questions together. The intensity of her gaze drew me in, softening my anger with an underlying compassion. I wanted to shake her off, to deny any glimmer of hope for reconciliation. But the connection I felt to her honesty began paving a way toward understanding. Ella, if she cheated, it means every promise we made is now tainted. Our vows were sacred. I believed in them. If I were to even entertain the idea of moving forward, how could I ever trust her again? My voice wavered, betraying the turmoil within my heart. Trust is rebuilt. It doesn't simply vanish into thin air, Ella replied, her tone firm yet calm. It's bruised, yes, but Lily's love for you isn't extinguished. It's messy, complicated, but it can be restored. Repair takes work, heartbreaking, admirable work, but it's something you both can strive for if you choose to. As I wrestled with Ella's insistence, I could feel the turmoil within me shifting. Perhaps there was an unfulfilled yearning for connection between Lily and me that had left us both vulnerable to outside influences. A nagging sense of doubt lingered in my mind, begging me to consider whether we could navigate through this labyrinth and find a way back to one another. Would I even recognize the woman I married anymore? What if we're both mere shadows of who we used to be? I posed, unsure where my heart stood. How do I know Lily can find her way back? Ella's reply took the form of a gentle challenge, her eyes fierce but filled with kindness. You won't know until you give her a chance. Talk to her. Share your pain and your confusion. Once you face it, you can decide whether the embers of love are worth rekindling. Words that shimmered with both warmth and possibility circled my mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust. Maybe there was a chance that hope lay ahead, behind the shadows of pain. Maybe this path was meant to strip away the husks of our old selves, revealing a new love forged by honesty through the fire. The thought glimmered like a lighthouse flickering from afar, beckoning me through the darkness. Noah's innocent laughter echoed in my thoughts, a grounding force pulling me toward the right decision. I needed to protect that light, our little boy, from the downfall of what once was. Feeling naive for even considering it, I still felt this flicker of hope begin to pulse in sync with my heart. As I rose to leave the cafe, a weight seemed to lift, opening a space for possibility instead of denial. Ella's words replayed in my mind, and I stepped out into the crisp evening air, the shadows of doubt still swirling around me, yet softer than before. I found myself wrestling with the horizon of my journey, tentative yet undeniably drawn to the notion that perhaps in the wake of our mistakes, there existed the potential for another chance. The desire to confront our tangled history and salvage something from the wreckage of our past made my heart beat fervently, and my thoughts swirl with anxious anticipation. Would I be strong enough to meet Lily face to face? To open this door, tempting risk and vulnerability, while inviting the warmth of connection back into our lives? The future loomed ahead, uncertain but glowing with a resilience I hadn't known I possessed. The heart, I realized, often fought to survive, even in the darkest of storms. Steeling myself against the incoming tide of uncertainty, I stepped forward into that treacherous night, determined to seek her out, to confront the shadows lurking between us and uncover the possibilities that lay ahead. That evening felt eerily quiet as I paced the living room, my mind racing with reflections of our marriage, each corner of the house a reminder of love and laughter now stained with doubt. The sleek lines of the furniture, the carefully chosen decor, and even the soft creases of the throw blanket on the couch, all items I had once regarded with fondness now bore witness to the chaos swirling within my heart. I waited for Lily's arrival, my chest tightening as the clock ticked on, each moment stretching like an eternity, amplifying my sense of impending dread. When she finally stepped through the door, her exuberance faltered as she caught sight of my furious expression. The warmth that had enveloped our home vanished, replaced by an atmosphere heavy with unspoken accusations. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence, yet the tremor in her voice betrayed her. I could see the way her posture shifted, the way her confident stride faltered as she crossed into the battleground of our living room. Without hesitating, I placed the photos on the dining table between us, the vibrant images stark against the polished surface, like wounds splattered across pristine skin. Is this your idea of fun, Lily? I spat, my voice rising like a tide washing over our once serene existence. She scoffed, a defensive reaction that only stoked the embers of my rage. They were just pictures, Brian. Moments blown out of proportion. Moments blown out of proportion? I echoed incredulously. You call it a moment, but it's a gut punch to everything we built together. The words burst from me, heavy with the weight of betrayal, rendering me vulnerable, yet simultaneously fierce. My voice cracked under the torment that swirled inside like a raging storm, each wave crashing against the island of love we once inhabited. Ella told me everything, the truth behind your escapade, I pressed, forcing her to make eye contact, to bear witness to the devastation. Her gaze flitted away, desperation tinging her own expression as she grappled with the truth slithering between us. It was a mistake. I was confused. She almost shouted, her pleas refusing to penetrate the wall of hurt I had constructed. Do you hear yourself? I demanded, exasperated. What do you want from me, Brian? I can't turn back time. The crux of our existence lay buried beneath the surface, each word a jagged shard cutting deeper. I had wished for understanding, for healing, yet all I felt was the void of betrayal. I wanted my wife back, the woman who promised to stand by my side, the partner I thought I could trust above all else. But even in my anger, I recognized the flickering hints of her guilt. Lily's eyes glistened, reflecting a mixture of sorrow and fear that threatened to unravel everything. What can I do to make this right? She asked, her voice softer yet still tinged with panic. Tell me what you want from me. I can't fix something I didn't know I broke. It feels like all you did was tear everything apart, I said, tearing up, the ache unleashed on my chest now spilling into my voice. Did you ever consider how this would shatter our world? Our son. The thought of Noah, our innocent boy, loomed in my mind like an anchor tethering me to what truly mattered. At that moment, her eyes softened, revealing the cracks in her armor. I didn't mean for it to happen, I swear, she murmured, the tremor in her voice now revealing traces of vulnerability. Everything had felt so distant between us. I didn't know how to reach out. I thought this could fill the void. A wave of desolation washed over me, my instincts resting with the little sparks of empathy bubbling beneath my rage. It unsettled me, the knowledge that we had become strangers in our own lives, locked away behind walls built by expectations and neglect. The ache settled in my gut, a visceral reminder that this spiral began long before the photos captured those snippets of betrayal. I scrutinized her features, desperately searching for the woman I had once adored. The love that had danced in her eyes, the warmth, the laughter, seemed buried beneath layers of confusion and regret. Lily, I said softly, the earlier fire fading to a dull ember. I've been so blinded by my own busyness, my ambition to provide for us, that I didn't realize how far we drifted apart. But this hurts more than I can articulate. I thought you were happy, she whispered, tears cascading down her cheeks, glistening like shards of glass reflecting the chaos around us. I didn't think I could ever share this with you. I was afraid. Her admission sent shivers down my spine, as if the precarious truth of our relationship quivered in the air around us. What scared you the most? I asked, lowering my voice, shifting from a place of confrontation to that of curiosity. Maybe digging deeper could illuminate the fractures that had formed between us. What made you seek solace in someone else instead of coming to me? I felt alone, she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. It was as if I was screaming at the top of my lungs, but no one could hear me, not even you. Her hands trembled as she spoke, her fingers tracing the edges of the photos with a delicate reverence. I thought I could find a thrill and rediscover part of myself. I felt invisible. Her words pierced through the armor of my anger, chiseling away at the concentrated bitterness that enveloped my heart before fading into a fragile understanding. The revelation unfurled like a flower painfully opening to the light, a recognition of our shared responsibility in nurturing the love between us. But it wasn't the answer, I replied, my tone a mix of compassion and sorrow. Diving into someone else only buried your truth deeper. I never wanted to hurt you or Noah, she confessed, anguish flooding her features, wrinkling her forehead and twisting her lips. I thought I could escape parenting and work and everything else that overwhelmed me. Now I'm scared I've ruined us forever. Her fear settled upon me like a heavy shroud, yet beneath it was a flicker of hope. Perhaps this could lead us to an understanding, a chance to reconnect instead of drifting further apart. Yet the jagged edges of frustration still gnawed at me, reminding me how deeply pain lives in love's shadow. You can't hide from yourself or from this, Lily. But we have to confront this together. In that sacred space between us, I became acutely aware of the hesitance curling in my heart. This wasn't just about her betrayal or my anguish. It was about the fragility of the commitment we made, a promise woven through the fabric of our lives. What would it take for us to reforge that connection? Could we navigate this crucible forged from pain and betrayal, rising together like phoenixes from the ashes? I need time to think, to understand how we got here. I admitted, my voice barely a whisper now, but it was earnest. I don't know what tomorrow will look like, but I need you to be honest and vulnerable with me. Can you do that? More than anything, she replied, her voice breaking as she stepped toward me, her hands clasping mine, warm yet trembling. If I could take it all back, I would. But I will fight for us, Brian. I promise. Just give me the chance. Breathe. I told myself as I echoed her promise back in my mind, feeling the weight of her admission flush through my veins. The road ahead would be fraught with uncertainty, but the flicker of hope continued to grow, igniting something within me. The very core of what I had loved, what I craved, an authentic connection with the woman who stood before me, trembling yet hopeful. In a world where everything felt shattered, we had the small embers of an opportunity to begin anew, a chance to navigate this delicate dance where love could spark even from the rubble. With a heavy heart but resolute determination, I made my promise, guided not just by love but by a growing awareness that every moment, even the painful ones, could forge a path toward healing. The road ahead would demand honesty, even when it was painful. It would require strength, vulnerability, and a mutual resolve to rise from the wreckage of betrayal and reclaim the light we had almost lost. And so, amidst tears brimming at the edges and walls slowly softening, I dared to look toward the future, one tentative step at a time. In the stifling silence that followed, I could feel the tension bubble to the surface, the former warmth of our companionship twisted into a battlefield. You say you were confused, but your choices hurt our son too. Don't sit there and act like this affects only you, I challenged, my voice steady despite the storm inside. No one needs parents willing to fight this together, even if we can't stand next to each other anymore. Those words hung heavy in the air, a linchpin tethering us to the reality of our fractured family. Her facade waned, and I caught a glimpse of the woman I once adored, lost amidst the clamor of betrayal. I thought it would make me feel free. Give me a glimpse of happiness, she confessed, her voice wavering as tears trickled down her porcelain cheeks like rain on glass. As she spoke, I felt the ice in my heart soften, replaced with a curious blend of anger and empathy. Lily, you don't need to chase happiness in someone else's arms, I replied, my tone calming, but a sense of urgency clawed at my insides. You can find it here. We can find it together, if we're honest. The sincerity in my voice pierced through the tension, and I could almost hear the air shifting around us. It was awkward, the truth spilling forth like an open wound, but for the first time since I laid eyes on her, the heartache was beginning to take on a different taste. I messed up, she admitted, her words heavy with vulnerability, as if admitting her guilt would somehow lighten the burden we carried. Can we try? For Noah? Her eyes beseeched me, pools of regret and longing that held the weight of centuries. In that moment, my heart clutched like a fist around a fragile glass ornament. Part of me wanted to protect it from shattering, while another part urged me to fling it away, to rid myself of the pain it represented. The spiraling emotions danced chaotically within me. Images of our life together flickered through my mind. Noah's laughter ringing through the dining room, Lily's soft voice reciting bedtime stories, the gentle brush of our hands as we walked through parks, a montage that seemed both far and immediate. But everything was marred by that fateful betrayal, the sting of the photos, more vivid than ever in the back of my mind. Trying requires trust, and trust requires honesty, I said slowly, testing the words as they left my lips. My gaze fixated on hers, searching for a flicker of understanding, a glimmer that we might just be strong enough to navigate this chaos together. Can I really trust you again? Can you really commit to being honest with me? Her lips quivered, the pain reflected in her eyes, making my heart ache anew. I don't know if I can earn that trust back, Brian, but I will do everything to try starting now. The resoluteness in her voice, mingled with apologetic undertones, grounded me. I yearned for her, yet my heart ached with uncertainty. This emotional landscape felt alien and daunting, a tightrope stretched high above the chasm of our past mistakes. Staring down at the dining table, I could almost hear the echoes of our shared laughter, memories that had draped joy over our everyday lives now threatened by dread. Strangely, the table felt like a gaping mouth, ready to devour our fragile reconciliation. Vivid images flooded back, our first family dinner, with Noah barely a year old, gurgling over mashed peas while we exchanged furtive glances of infatuation. It all seemed like a distant dream, tainted now by what had transpired in the shadows. "Why did you let it go so far?" I asked, almost whispering as the truth hung between us like the delicate strands of a spider's web, fragile yet dangerously alive. "Did you truly believe that kissing someone else would bring you the happiness you sought? It was never supposed to be like that," she burst out, her voice rising, both defensively and desperately. I felt invisible, like I was living life on the sidelines. I just wanted to feel seen again. And then Alex, he listened. He made me feel like I could breathe. The admission opened up a fissure in my heart, a blend of empathy tainted with betrayal, an uncomfortable mixture that twisted and contorted within me. "But you didn't think about how lonely I felt. You didn't think I was crying for help too? How could we have grown together if you weren't willing to let me in?" My words were laced with frustration, yet I recognized the deeper, primal pain of longing to connect with a person I had pledged my life to. "I'm sorry, Brian. I didn't see how far away I had drifted." I knew, but it felt safer to stay wrapped in the fantasy outside rather than confront the truth with you. The resolve flickered in her voice, yet the undercurrent of despair tugged at my heart. Her confession revealed not a monster, but a lost soul, grappling with her own identity and choices. It was too easy to cast blame, yet I couldn't help but feel the tug pulling me towards understanding. Sharing our vulnerabilities had stripped us bare, exposing the jagged edges of our humanity. I was lost too. I reflected quietly, guilt seeping into the corners of my heart. The childhood memories of my own father, absent yet omnipresent, cried out for acknowledgement. I let work consume me, ignoring everything else. I trailed off, searching her eyes for confirmation of shared responsibility. I thought providing for you both was enough, yet I failed to nurture the roots of our connection. I hadn't even noticed how empty the spaces around us became. The silence that followed pulsated with vulnerability, each heartbeat just as tangible as the words we had yet to speak. The room felt charged, alive with the aching understanding of who we had been and all we still could be. I could read her own contemplation in the furrow of her brow, in the tremble of her lips as she processed the expanse of our revelations. "But do we really have the strength to navigate this?" I asked gently, breaking the silence that was becoming unbearably heavy. "To confront the wounds we've inflicted without tearing ourselves apart?" Lily met my gaze, and in that moment, a tentative determination radiated through my chest. "We can't go back, Brian. But we can move forward together if you let me." The quiet essence of resolve seeped into my bones, though doubt still clawed at the edges of my mind. Can we recover from this betrayal and learn to truly rebuild? Can we not just wear our scars, but embrace them, forging a path toward healing? "This all feels impossibly daunting," I replied, vulnerability bleeding into my voice. "Perhaps daunting, but not impossible," she said flatly. The hopefulness in her voice danced with my desire to believe, to imagine a future where our shared laughter echoed once more. "Let's put the past behind us and work on being present for ourselves, for each other. Can we promise that?" As we stood facing each other, raw, exposed, and grappling with our truths, a gentle flicker ignited deep within me. The road ahead was no doubt fraught with difficulties, yet glimmered with the possibility of rediscovery. Maybe, just maybe, we could weave a new tapestry from the remnants of our shattered past, one that protected our son and held compassion for our broken hearts. In that moment, as we clutched each other's hands, I understood that there was courage in vulnerability, and the journey we were about to embark upon was more vital than anything we could ever construct in isolation. I breathed, tasting the bittersweet essence of hope, both terrifying and exhilarating, as we prepared to confront our reality together. A long silence hung between us, stretching minutes into hours, as I weighed the balance of forgiveness against the weight of truth. The kitchen, illuminated by the dim glow of the overhead light, felt like a twilight zone caught between day and night, obscured yet hopeful. I could see the genuine remorse in her eyes, a light that sizzled and fizzed like embers fighting against the cool air of a storm. But the shards of our past were sharp and glistening, hard to ignore, and I wasn't sure I could rebuild on such a broken foundation. Lily, I began, hesitantly crafting my words like glass, fragile but necessary. This willingness to change doesn't erase your actions. We can't just sweep everything under a rug. Each syllable felt weighty, a tangible articulation of the chaos spiraling in my mind. I could feel the tension creeping back in, trickling like ice through my veins. The notion of confrontation loomed over me, nearly suffocating in its inadequacy. I know, but I want to try, Brian. Her voice trembled, nostalgia swirling with abandonment in the air between us. I had adored that voice once, the way it danced through our home, drawing both laughter and solace. Now, it felt as if it belonged to a stranger, someone I once trusted but who had now betrayed the very core of our commitment. The thought stung like an open wound, jagged yet achingly familiar. We spoke for hours, exploring our fears, unearthing daunting questions hanging between us like silhouettes in a stormy twilight. Lily's internal turmoil poured forth, leaving her raw and exposed, while I sat transfixed, my heart both heavy and torn. I knew I had to decide whether to confront our reality head-on or begin peeling away the layers of history we had constructed while maintaining a delicate facade. The specter of walking away from the love we once shared clawed at my insides like an animal desperate for freedom. Yet, the reality loomed too. The scars of betrayal were deep, almost impenetrable. A vivid flash of the photos resurfaced in my mind, her smiling face tucked against Alex's, the soft curve of her laughter captured in an instant that now felt like a knife lodged deep in my gut. I struggled just to breathe, the weight of that moment stolen from me lingering like a ghost. Rebuilding this would demand transparency and patience from both of us, but my spirit wrestled with the notion that trust could somehow be mended in the same space where it had shattered. Maybe it's time we figure ourselves out separately, I suggested, my voice thick with emotion, the idea unsettling yet comforting in its familiarity. Noah's happiness hinges on us, but I need to process this for myself before we move forward. The words fell from my lips, heavy with resignation as if they were a funeral dirge for the life we once envisioned together. A tumultuous war raged within me, battling desire and fear. Would stepping away bring us closer to what we needed? Lily remained silent, her gaze locked on the table. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, desperately seeking negotiation in the shards of her remorse. You might be right, she eventually whispered, her words barely escaping her lips. But it feels like surrender, Brian. I could see the truth in her expression, the way her brow furrowed as she danced with the pain of the choice before us. Only a moment earlier she had reached for my hand, seeking solace, and now it felt like she was retreating behind a wall of self-protection. Surrender feels heavy, I echoed, my mind swirling with all we had fought for. But you chose this fracture we're navigating. She nodded slowly, tears shimmering in her eyes, each droplet akin to a river over a rocky terrain, soft yet unyielding. Her vulnerability felt like a double-edged sword, cutting through my anger as clearly as it ignited it. I was wrong, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But we can't let the happiness of our son slip through our fingers because of this. Her voice shook as she spoke, each word falling from her lips heavy with fear and regret. The image of Noah flashed in my mind, innocent and bright, a beacon of light amid our darkness. I don't want to hurt him, I admitted, my voice trembling with the shame of our reality. He deserves a home filled with love, even if it's not the one we envisioned. The guilt that washed over me was sharp and staggering. It was suffocating. And you're right, if we're battling through this, we need to know who we are first. Noah's the priority, she affirmed, conviction pulling at my heartstrings. Whatever happens between us, we owe it to him to figure this out. I remained silent, the weight of our ordeal pressing against my chest like an unrelenting tide. In that silence, thoughts churned like storm clouds threatening to break. How do we get so off course? The intimacy we had shared felt so far away, and I wondered if it was even possible to return to a place of comfort. With a surge of resolve, I remembered the countless nights we'd laughed until the sun peeked through the curtains. Can we piece ourselves back together? I asked, my words a tremor escaping from lips that long for connection. Can we find that place of laughter again, or are we forever tainted by this fracture? This question hung uncomfortably between us, slipping like sand through fingertips. Hope wrestled with doubt, and I could feel myself teetering on the edge of faith, scared of the plunge that awaited me. Perhaps healing is an act of bravery, she replied softly. And bravery often feels like jumping into the unknown. The thought stirred something within me. What if navigating this chaotic ordeal together would allow us both to heal, rather than retreat into our own lonely corners? I pictured the future ahead, uncertain yet filled with the possibility of reclaiming who we once were, the tender woven fabric of our marriage that had long felt frayed and worn. As our eyes locked again, a spark ignited, a vital connection that flickered against the darkness surrounding our lives. That glimmer of something we could save filled the atmosphere with a breath of potential. It bore the weight of the past, but shimmered with a promise of resilience. The road ahead seemed to stretch infinitely, riddled with potholes and sharp turns, yet the small flicker of hope within me expanded into something stronger. I exhaled deeply, surrendering the remnants of my fear while doubling down on the belief we could start anew. I could still see glimpses of the woman Lily used to be, the woman I still loved, hidden underneath the chaos of our lives. If she could show up for me, perhaps I could summon the strength to do the same. "We can give this a shot, Lily," I said, my voice steadying. "But we need to be real with ourselves and each other every step of the way. No more sidesteps into denial." A look of relief washed over Lily's face, the clouds parting just slightly in that moment. I reached across the table, promising a commitment to the journey ahead, a tether cast in the midst of our storm. "Let's commit to facing whatever lies ahead," she whispered, her voice trembling with renewed determination. And as our hands intertwined over the vast expanse of our dining room table, the comforting weight of our commitment began to anchor us against the tide of anxiety that had once threatened to sweep us away. With deep breaths echoing the thoughts of our son and the life hidden beneath our sorrow, hope blossomed silently among the wreckage. We were destined to chart a path through this tumultuous journey. Maybe, just maybe, we could grasp the future we had once imagined, buried but not forgotten, while bloomed yet another chance to bring laughter together. Over the following weeks, we set aside time for evenings filled with open conversation, words slipping softly into the air as if coaxed from hiding after a long silence. The kitchen became our sacred space, illuminated by the warm glow of the pendant lights swaying gently overhead, the flickering of shadows dancing along the walls. Each encounter felt bittersweet, a delicate balance of intimacy overshadowed by lingering pain. As I watched Lily move around the kitchen, habitually filling the kettle and preparing tea, I recalled the way she'd exuded warmth, her laughter infused with a richness that once made this very room feel alive. Now, the familiar gestures carved raw wells of emotion deep within me. Our gazes met occasionally, conveying more than words could, a brief reminder of the love that had brought us together that now clashed with our unfolding reality. "Do you remember the first time you made dinner for me?" she offered unexpectedly, her voice softening as she put the kettle onto the stove, the water planning to boil while memories blossomed between us. "You set the table like we were at a five-star restaurant. Even the ice cream was put in fancy bowls." The sudden nostalgia juxtaposed against the present reality sent my heart fluttering into a worry that edged into haunting. I remembered how I had gone all out that night, eager to impress her, hoping to share something beautiful. Sitting there, I found the courage to smile despite the ache in my chest. "I thought you'd be impressed by my culinary skills," I said, quirk of a grin appearing on my lips. And I was. I thought, who is this man cooking like a chef at home? Her eyes brightened for a moment, flickers of warmth illuminating the otherwise somber evening. Yet the laughter faded almost as swiftly as it had appeared, the pull of our shared history both comforting and stinging. "What are we, Brian?" she asked suddenly, the question hanging heavy in the space between us. For an instant, time froze. The clinking sound of a spoon falling into the sink echoed around us, jarring me back into the fragile present. There was a vulnerability in her tone that evoked something profound, drawing me closer to the emotional brink. I pondered my answer, searching for a way to honor her inquiry without falling back into the bitterness. It was a dance of sorts, a challenge to reinvent our relationship while still standing on uncertain ground. "I think we're learning to exist apart but still united in a way," I replied cautiously. "A bond that's been altered but not entirely erased. We still share a child, our beautiful, innocent Noah who deserves the best of us." She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes, a stunning mixture of fear and hope cascading across her features. "And it's so hard to navigate this without feeling the weight of failure clawing at us," she murmured. "Failure not just as a couple, but as parents." The weight of those words echoed within me, and I felt my own heartache flicker beneath the surface, a misaligned rhythm that quickened with every confession. Every moment I breathe makes me feel like I'm being swallowed whole by uncertainty. I don't want either of us to fail. My voice quaked as I confessed my own fears that had tucked themselves into dark corners of my heart. That scares me more than anything. Losing the essence of what matters most. Learning I can't reach Noah without reaching you first. In addressing our shared fear, the emotional climate shifted ever so slightly. A breath of understanding seeped between us. For the first time in weeks, I could see Lily as both the woman I loved and the individual who had made grievous mistakes. The flaws didn't eclipse her humanity. They framed the narrative of our challenged yet resilient partnership. There's a raw truth to this pain we've caused ourselves, she acknowledged, wiping away a tear from her cheek, her vulnerability becoming a thread tethering us both in our shared journey toward healing. It forces us to evaluate every decision, every moment we choose to spend together or apart. Yes, a whole new realm of honesty. My heart thudded against my ribcage, matching the intensity of the conversation. It may feel overwhelming, but it's what we need, especially if we're serious about co-parenting. Noah deserves parents willing to hold ourselves accountable to each other and to him. Accountability. It's like riding a unicycle on a tightrope, she mused, a hint of levity returning to her face. We must stay focused, or we'll end up tumbling. I laughed lightly, appreciating that glimmer of humor as we readjusted our footing on this precarious path forward. I think I'd rather stick with a bicycle for now, I quipped. At least it has more than one wheel. As we navigated back to shared interplays of humor, something began to shift. The atmosphere of heaviness slowly dissipated, revealing spaces unoccupied by regret. Conversations circled around those minor joys in Noah's life, his recent fascination with dinosaurs, and the way his laughter felt like music carried on the breeze. Those fragments, once overshadowed by our ache, now offered the small, hopeful reminders we so desperately needed. The nights grew longer, the talks deeper, and each exchange peeled back layers of defenses. We learned to be raw with each other, often devoid of artifice, allowing vulnerabilities to cascade over our defenses like an unstoppable tide. Each moment, though still precarious, was tinged with the essence of exploration and understanding born from that tumultuous surrender. I found myself beginning to breathe freely once again, not just as a father, but as a man on the verge of rediscovering his own identity, a venture hitherto eclipsed by doubt and despair. And as weeks passed, our roles morphed fluidly from lovers to allies navigating the complexities of shared parenthood. One chaotic Friday evening, the three of us gathered on the brown plush rug in the living room, Noah's giggles blending seamlessly with our laughter as he donned a makeshift dinosaur costume, a vision of imagination that brightened even the darkest corners of our strain. Watching Lily mirror our child's joy eased the tightness in my chest, unspooling knots of resentment that had threatened to tighten around my heart. "Roar like a T-Rex, Noah," Lily exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with delight. There was excitement in her voice that mirrored the playful enormity of the moment. "Let's see those tiny arms." He let out a gratifying roar that ripped through the air, embedding a moment of pure bliss in our fractured world, an authentic connection emerging in simple joy. A revelation washed over me, an understanding that love, even fractured, can manifest in myriad ways. With Noah as our anchor, we could still find our way, carving out new orientations through shared moments filled with laughter and tears. In those transforming evenings, we began to sketch out boundaries, not walls to separate, but delineations that defined our new relationship. The tapestry of our experiences slowly evolved under the golds and reds of setting suns. The fragments of our shared laughter and experiences began to combine, weaving resilience into every interaction, every thought we shared as a family. Somewhere along the line, I realized that forgiveness, while born of anguish, made space for tenderness. We were learning that with every step into the future, the blazing flame of hope flickered brighter, a testament to what love could remain amid storms as we forge ahead, together yet apart.